35 on CKNW in the world today. We get a lot of email and obviously calls complaining about politicians and governments and their sometimes only passing interest in telling the truth, the whole truth. They spend millions and millions of dollars on communications, making sure the spin matches the political agenda. And really, isn't party politics all about swaying voters to a particular point of view? So is it possible for us to be governed by politicians that tell the truth all the time? Or is that just too much to ask for? I received some emails from a listener by the name of Jamie Scott, who's putting together what he calls the Truth Party Project. Intrigued, I asked Jamie to join us to add to this ongoing debate and conversation about politics and how we're governed. Jamie Scott's on the line with us this evening. Jamie, nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you, John. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. It's a grand sounding name, the Truth Party. What's the idea? What's the philosophy behind it?
Well, the philosophy is that there's no reason why our politicians and our political leaders can't tell us the truth all the time about everything, and have the media also investigate thoroughly all the truth whenever the politicians are keeping something from us, and then letting the people decide what actions to take, whether their perspective is left or right. And of course, I'm going to get into these divisions, which, aren't really divisions. Most of us are just in the middle, but we're sort of divided into different groups just to keep us sort of arguing amongst ourselves instead of tackling some of these issues head on.
And is that your perception, that a lot of what's going on is just people arguing among themselves, arguing points that oftentimes don't make any difference in the bigger picture?
Well, what's going on now, most currently with the World Economic Depression, is the people know that something's wrong, and they know that they're not being told the whole truth, but they're not sure what to do about it. And everybody that I talk to is like, well, when I said I was going to come into politics, they say, well, either you better learn how to lie or politicians always lie. And it doesn't have to be that way. In regards to the economy, I'm happy to come on after your last guest, because you were both discussing that there's either, there's only two options. We either borrow more money or we cut spending. And under our current economics and political systems, those are the only two options. And they both end up in a continuing, ongoing depression, which is going to get worse. What we're going to offer is the third option, which is to cancel all of these debts, personal and national. And we have a realistic plan for doing so, and we can sort of turn the entire world around in short order just by being honest.
But how do you say to people who have invested, people who have money tied up in all of this, we're just going to cancel that now? We're just going to say, write all of this off, and because what you're talking about is a completely a different economic and political system.
Yeah, what we use around the world in every country now, using a paper currency, gets their money issued to them from a private central bank. And instead of countries issuing their own currency to their people for them to, function, whatever kind of country, a democracy, a communist, a dictatorship, whatever, countries used to nationally issue a currency, and that's what the people would use. Now the governments are borrowing this currency privately, and when the banks issue the money to us, like Federal Reserve in the United States, for instance, they issue real paper currency, but when it's time for the government or the people to pay that money back, even if they were to give all the money back, they can't get out of the debt because of the application of interest. And the interest is not printed off. So the people in the country can never get out of debt. And as soon as your nation uses a private central bank, you are assigning your people into a perpetual debt slavery model that they can never get out of, no matter if you decide to increase stimulus and prolong the situation and, sort of put a stay on the depression, or if you want to go through austerity and have the depression come in rather rapidly, which is likely to happen, it's still the same result. If you have a private bank, your country is going to end up in default.
Well, isn't part of the problem, and I don't know that I agree completely with what you say, but isn't part of the problem that those dollars, those bills, those pieces of paper that we all carry around with us, or at least we used to, that they aren't particularly backed by anything. They don't. They're not backed by gold, which they used to be. We used to be on a gold standard where. In the old days, in the 70s, I suppose, the $33 US was worth 1 ounce of gold. Well, these days, governments can keep printing this stuff willy-nilly because it's not tied to anything.
Well, that's absolutely right. All of our paper currencies are now backed by nothing. And so governments are printing uncontrollably. They do it in different ways. The United States, they physically print the money, and they printed $24 trillion in the last year and a half since the new administration's come in. Not that it was any different or worse than the last administration. But in Canada, we don't physically print the bills. The currency is issued by banks as debt in the form of loans. And that money, when businesses or people take out loans and mortgages, gets digitally entered in their accounts and then added to our existing money supply, which draws off the value of the original dollars in circulation, and you end up, it's basically a pyramid scheme that has to collapse, and all paper currencies are going to collapse worldwide. We're just last because
we've got some oil and stuff.
Exactly, thank you. We have the most resources to take as collateral for non-repayment, so we're going to be the last ones to find out. We sit here and look at Greece and say, well, they retired too early, or they spent too much money on social programs or socialism. It's nonsense. They can't get out of debt, just like the United States can't get out of debt, and Canada can't get out of debt. No country can unless you replace the governments, bring in an entirely new economic system, and cancel and delete the debts. Everyone starts from scratch.
You're an intriguing fellow. We will continue our discussion with Jamie Scott. He is leading what he calls the Truth Party Project, and we'll continue our discussion after this break. Stay with us.